Is your family's wealth truly protected? If you're relying on a living trust, you might be in for a shock. Welcome to BoomX Academy, where we empower family leaders to grow and protect their family's wealth. Now, the topic today is on living trust.
And have you ever wondered and thought to yourself, maybe you're 50, 60, even 70 years old. You're supposed to have an estate plan, and maybe you have an estate plan, but you feel like it's out of date. And you wonder, what do I need? Like, I hear all this stuff, these things. Everyone's talking about living trust, for example.
And worse, not only does it not protect your assets, but it actually exposes your assets. The reason for this is simply there is a difference between estate transfer and asset protection.
All right, so living trusts, huh? You're thinking they're the ultimate shield for your stuff. At least that's what those online ads would have you believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this video from this attorney, Darol Tuttle, kind of threw me for a loop.
Yeah, it's easy to fall for those catchy promises, isn't it? But what I find really interesting is how Tuttle starts off. He doesn't even jump straight into the legal stuff. He talks about these money models, which I've never thought about it that way before.
I know, right? Like he's saying before you even think about trusts or whatever, you got to figure out what game you're playing. Like, what's the goal here? Estate transfer, asset protection.
Like, what's the difference between probate avoidance or just a simple estate transfer and asset protection?
Generational wealth. He lays it all out there.
It's true. Then he makes this point that each of these games might have totally different rules. What works for one might not work for another.
Exactly. Like, okay, estate transfer, that one seems pretty straightforward. You want your assets to pass down to your heirs when you're gone. But then Tuttle gets into asset protection, and that's where things get kind of wild.
Yeah, he flips the script on that one. He's all about protecting your assets right now, today, not just when you're pushing up daisies.
And this is the part that blew my mind. He straight up says, and I quote, "You cannot use a living trust for asset protection."
The next thing that you need to walk away from and understand is that there is one solution. I mean that. There is one solution in the law to protect an inheritance of the surviving spouse so that it is not subject to spend down, Medicaid liens, transfer penalties, and the look-back periods. Brutal Medicaid spend downs. And it's a spousal protection trust. It must be created by the last will and testament of the first spouse to die. I want to repeat that. If you are married and if you are considering your estate plan, I'm here to tell you, you cannot use a living trust, period.
I mean, come on, seriously. Every other ad online is screaming the opposite.
Right. And he backs it up, too. He explains how most of these living trusts, they're revocable, so you can change them. And that means if a creditor comes knocking, you might be forced to use those assets to pay up.
If you get sick, that money is protected. If she gets sick, that money is protected. If you pass away, the rest of it can go in a spousal protection trust, and the silo that you set up ahead of time is there for her benefit, even while you're alive, in a way that is just so much more intelligent and financially responsible and mature than ignoring, putting our head in the sand and doing nothing and using a simple living trust that jeopardizes the entire thing right at the moment when we need financial security the most.
So much for ironclad protection, huh?
Exactly. He contrasts this with irrevocable trusts. Those are way tougher for creditors to get their hands on.
That Medicaid cannot reach, the taxman cannot reach lawsuit judgment holders, and the irresponsible, sometimes some of my clients worry about the financial responsibility of their spouse, right? So asset protection, set aside, a pot of money set aside from the family for the benefit of the your spouse during your lifetime, which is like the high country of asset protection.
Because you're not really in control of the assets anymore.
Okay, so huge difference there. And then, get this. Tuttle does this whole bit where he Googles Do living trusts protect your assets?
Oh, yeah, I saw that. Classic.
And boom, pages of results pop up, and so many of them are pushing this idea that a living trust is all you need. It's like, are we living in the Matrix here? How is everyone getting this so wrong?
Well, he makes this point that some financial companies kind of use this confusion to their advantage. They dangle this safeguard your assets carrot, but they're not really addressing your actual needs when it comes to asset protection.
And to be fair, he does make this really important distinction between avoiding probate, which is just about how your stuff gets divvied up after you're gone, and actual asset protection, like protecting what you have now from lawsuits and creditors, even Medicaid claims.
Right.
Spousal protection really is a concept in which we are repositioning wealth lawfully and morally and ethically to render it unavailable to creditors unless there's a legal burden otherwise. And I'm here to tell you, not only is there no legal duty to expose your wealth to brutal Medicaid spend downs and taxation, I would argue there's a moral duty to protect it, asset protection. But it's also protecting wealth against ourselves.
He's not messing around. You can tell he's seen the consequences of people getting this wrong, and he's like, wake up, people, this is serious stuff.
You can tell he's speaking from experience, too. I mean, the guy's a retired attorney. He's not trying to sell us anything. He even throws in references to specific state laws, like he's been in the trenches.
Yeah, that insider knowledge definitely gives his words more weight. He's not just talking the talk, you know.
So different tools for different goals, that's clear. And he even throws a little shade at some of those law firm articles that act like living trusts are the be-all and end-all solution, which, you know, it makes you wonder.
Yeah. If maybe there's a little incentive to oversell the benefits there, right?
And when people start talking about living trust as being the instrument, they don't know what they're talking about as to Medicaid asset protection. Two different things. Estate planning lawyers are folks who are selling living trusts and other probate avoidance type techniques. They are blithely unaware, because the Medicaid regulations are complicated. You got to roll up your sleeves, put some elbow grease into it, make an effort. You have to learn these advanced tax rules. However, if you understand trust rules then you can see that this one solution in the law is actually easy to implement. And it is only one choice.
Something to think about.
For sure. So if a living trust isn't always the answer, then what are our options? What can people actually do right now to protect what's theirs? So we've tossed those living trust myths out the window, but the big question is, what tools actually work for serious asset protection? Luckily, Tuttle gives us some answers.
Oh, yeah, he dives right into some pretty interesting alternatives.
Yeah.
Asset protection trusts, for one. We were talking about irrevocable trusts earlier, right?
Right.
Once again, both spouses must create a will for each other's benefit. When it doesn't matter which spouse dies first, I believe statistically, men die first. We have a shorter life expectancy. And so when husband passes away, hypothetically in our example, then the will it's in the trust or in the will. It's called the testamentary trust. It springs into existence, and the inheritance of the surviving spouse goes into the trust. At that point, not only does that trust render the inheritance protected, not subject to spend down, if you live in a state in which there is an estate tax, it is the only way to double the estate tax exemption. That trust is so amazing because it serves as an estate tax savings trust and an asset protection trust against the biggest threat to wealth in America today, which is unreimbursed medical expenses. Hallelujah.
Right, the ones that creditors can't easily touch because you don't have direct control over them anymore. Sounds intense.
Well, that's kind of the point, isn't it? These trusts are designed specifically to shield your assets. And he even mentioned some other strategies like family limited partnerships, LLCs.
Wait, hold on. LLCs? Like
Yeah.
the things people use to start businesses.
You got it. It's all about being strategic, separating your personal assets from any potential liabilities. Think of it like building a wall between your hard-earned wealth and, well, any legal storms that might come your way.
Okay, now we're talking next level stuff. This is way more complex than I initially thought.
And that's exactly why Tuttle stresses the importance of planning ahead. He uses this phrase, the condition of human life as frail.
Away from And if you believe that that life is fragile, that it all has to come to an end for everybody, that mortality is a reality, that you're not denying the certainty of death and the probability, or at least possibility, of illness.
Which really resonated with me. Life throws curveballs, and waiting until there's a problem is, well, waiting too long.
No kidding. It's about taking charge, being proactive, not just crossing your fingers and hoping for the best.
Exactly. It's like you wouldn't wait until your house is on fire to buy insurance, right? Asset protection, it's kind of like, it's about ensuring your financial future.
Which brings us back to Tuttle's third money model, right? Generational wealth building. It's not just about safeguarding what you have now, but making sure it lasts.
Exactly. It's about building a legacy. Living trusts, they might have a role in that, but it's a bigger picture. Talking asset protection, tax strategies, even planning for business succession or charitable giving, all sorts of things.
Wow. Okay, so less of a picket fence, more like a fortress around your wealth.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
Multiple layers of protection, all strategically planned to withstand anything that comes your way. And that's why finding the right expert to guide you through all this is so crucial.
Okay, yeah, finding the right advisor, that's important for anything, but especially when it comes to something as important as your financial well-being.
Understand your goals, your risk tolerance, all of that, and then put together a plan that actually fits your needs.
And speaking of which, as we start to wrap things up here, any final thoughts on that? What's the big takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with today?
You know, I think if we had to boil down Tuttle's message to one thing, it's this: don't wait to think about asset protection. Don't just assume a living trust is some kind of magic solution. Take the time to learn about this stuff, Understand your options, find an expert you trust to guide you. It's worth it.
Knowledge is power, right?
So that's it. Just have faith. You can indeed learn over the internet. You can indeed get answers from me and family leaders and office hours every single week. You can direct message me. You can ask questions on the discussion board. You can walk away with a comprehensive guide to spousal protection. And most importantly of all, you have to have the legal documents. They have to be correctly drafted, and they have to be executed and notarized before they're legally effective. And with the course, you will walk away with the exact same, even better work product than the Canadian email marketing company is offering to lawyers across the country. That's it. Have faith at the BoomX Academy, and that's at boomx.biz.